stuff here. But I'll start by, I think everybody here knows that there's a sign-in sheet on the table. If you didn't sign it on the way in, please do so before you leave, so I have a record of who is here in attendance. There are probably agendas over there also. And we will start the meeting, as has become tradition, Sylvia, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Whoops, excuse me, one minute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You gotta give me a minute when I get up from a seat to stand.
Your timing was impeccable.
I can fall flat on my face.
We have one set of minutes to approve. It's the minutes of May 23rd.
I move to approve.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the minutes are approved. Do we have a couple of liquor licenses, a liquor license. Looks like Faringi, which is,
doing business as the Depot Cafe / Depot 62.
and this is a second class license,
And outside consumption.
and there's no issues
There are no issues.
outstanding, and it's a renewal of an existing license. If there's a motion, we'll,
Move to approve a Class 2 liquor license for Finji, doing business as Depot Cafe, Depot 62.
I'll second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any abstentions? That sounded unanimous, and we don't sign anything anymore, right? I'm still trying to catch up with the new.
So the next one will really throw you for a loop.
Okay, yeah, we've got a application for a tobacco license for Green Mountain Cannabis Works. Give us a little rundown on this one.
So discard the cannabis issue. So just focus on the tobacco part of it. So Anita found out that apparently the local municipal governing board will now approve tobacco licenses. So you'll be seeing a lot more of these as we go forward.
Wonderful.
And tobacco licenses, I assume it's grocery stores, convenience stores,
I would think everybody that sells tobacco.
everybody that sells tobacco.
And tobacco substitutes.
Yeah, and what kind of parameters do they have to adhere to that would give us that we would know about, that would give us the authority to do this?
It's the same as it used to be, so they're just asking for the municipality to review it and say, yes, we're okay
So
with it.
does that give us the opportunity to, probably shouldn't even mention it, but to look at whether they have outstanding debts to the town or
Yeah.
that sort of thing? I mean,
it's asking the select board to review it, so.
yeah, we've always used that as a tool to get those things squared away, water, sewer, taxes, whatever.
And this was sent to the same group that I send the information to about
Okay.
the licenses. So that has also been vetted through that process.
All right, so, do we know of any outstanding issues with Green Mountain Cannabis Works?
We don't have any, no.
And is that an existing entity? I am very ignorant about.
It's 4542 Main. It is an existing entity. I don't know much more.
Yeah.
Is that the new?
Yeah, I don't know.
Steve?
Is it a state policy?
Well, apparently there's been a change that it would run by the local,
So the
Tobacco
Board of Liquor and Lottery is the chief department that covers this. And they're the ones that said that for a license, a person or entity shall apply to the legislative body of the municipality and shall pay the fees. Of course, the fee goes to the state.
but we get to administer it.
Of course.
for free.
There you go.
Is that true, Anita?
I am still waiting on a call back from the state at this point in time, but I also received a memo that I overlooked in August of '22. Surprise, surprise, my office was a little busy then. Allegedly, we may be able to collect $50 per tobacco license. But
For,
I
for
have
eight,
fallen
for
into-
8 tobacco licenses?
Wow.
It's either 50, 55, or 110. There's a tobacco license and then a tobacco substitute, but I'm waiting for.
Would that require an action by the board to charge that fee? I mean, it's not something that would be automatic.
No, that would be automatic
Really?
if I'm reading the memo correctly.
We need to do a little bit of research on that. Or Anita's already done some.
Yep, I already have a call in, and I also have a call into him regarding request to cater permits. So the select board, a couple of years ago, authorized me as the town clerk to go ahead and approve those, so you guys didn't have to meet. I've been issuing anywhere from 3 to 10 a week. There's been a little bit of discussion on clerk listservs saying, hey, can we start charging for this? So Scott and I had a brief conversation. Martin is also going to be getting back to me on that. But if that's the case, I may be coming to the board and saying, hey, is this something that we can look at doing?
Yeah,
That'll also give the individuals applying for these a little bit more responsibility. We are a 2-person office. We do take time off, so sometimes there's only one of us in the office. It's very difficult, especially in the summertime, when we're issuing 4 to 5 licenses on a Friday afternoon. There's one of us in the office because the other one's on vacation, and we have 2 request to caterers come in at the last minute for a Saturday event. We obviously try to make it happen. That's our economy here in Manchester. But it would also put some responsibility back on the individuals to give us a little bit of time so we can also give the state a little bit of time.
What's the catering, what does that involve? Catering what?
It's 110 for the license, 50 for any substitute.
Oh.
So it's 160 total. I'm looking at the Vermont statute on alcohol beverages, cannabis, and tobacco. And it's $110 for tobacco license or renewal.
that's to the state.
To the
Per year?
legislative body of the municipality,
Oh,
a fee of 110. To the legislative body of the municipality, a fee of 50 for a substitute, tobacco substitute, as provided. And then it goes on to talk about the clerks.
If you scroll all the way to the bottom of that,
Yeah.
there should be another like 2 to 3 lines. And it ends with something like, but the municipality does not get any fees. But up here it says we do, so do we or do we not?
Oh, okay, so you've seen it. Anyway, I just want to let you know, there's more, there's a lot.
I guess we need some kind of definitive answer on
So
that.
what's the catering? I'm not quite clear on that. If somebody wants to cater to Ben, they have to apply for a license?
With alcohol, yes. That's-
With alcohol, but not
I
without
apologize.
alcohol. Not without alcohol.
I don't know.
No?
No.
So that request to cater discussion will happen next meeting. We'll have more information. for
Okay,
you that we- that
all right.
was
So we don't
planned.
need to spend any more time on that here this evening, but it's an interesting discussion. To my knowledge, this is the first tobacco license that we've approved at this level. And I don't want to hold this particular applicant up, and we've already approved it.
We have?
Did we?
No?
No.
No, we haven't
Oh,
been there.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
I know.
We haven't gone there.
Would it make sense for us to take a step back and see if we're going to charge a fee for this?
Anita, do you know when their license will expire to sell tobacco?
This one is the
This is
new,
It's a
brand
new
new.
license.
the new
New-
cannabis.
Oh, okay.
These guys haven't even opened
No,
yet. It's
they
up,
haven't
this
opened
is the
yet.
location up by Shaw's at the roundabout, next
Okay,
to
okay.
the
Yeah.
Josiah Allen office.
Okay.
So I'd imagine it would be fine to wait 2 more weeks and address it and have more information.
Yeah, because if
Or
we're
do a
going to
welcome to
charge a
town.
fee, it should be
You'll
consistent.
be your last one for free.
We need to know more.
We need to know a little bit more.
Okay, then we'll
Not
put that
that
one
we're
on.
not willing to approve this, but we want to make sure that we do what we're supposed to do. Interesting. So what would happen, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but what would happen with the people that have existing tobacco licenses, would we be
Don't-
seeing those soon, or
They were lumped together.
they were lumped together?
They were lumped together, and we haven't seen many at all, which is why I didn't realize they were vetting back through the clerk's office, through the select board.
Yeah,
It's annual, so every year they have to, wow, we're gonna get a lot of these.
just like the liquor licenses.
Yeah.
And it's now a rolling renewal period, so we don't have
But,
that.
I mean, we should
definitive-
get an administrative fee for
Yeah, for sure.
doing all this.
Yeah.
We're doing this, and it's passing through to the state. We're gonna collect their fees to the state also.
No.
No,
So everything pertaining to the state now goes directly through the portal. The only thing that they need to come in or call us with is a credit card, debit card, or a check or cash in person.
okay.
Everything else is done online.
Ah, okay. Huh, indeed.
Agreed.
Okay, let's, so we'll have our friends from Green Mountain Cannabis back on the agenda at our next meeting.
Next meeting.
Perfect.
Okay, with more information.
Well, here's a fun one. Possibly appoint Peter Brabazon as the zoning administrator.
So just to give you a little background, and I know we talked about it at the last meeting, Peter had reluctantly, had declined pursuing the job when we were looking for a zoning administrator. And we went through the interview process and we narrowed it down to a couple of good people. But they had no experience and no background in real estate or anything. So although they were good quality job applicants, they really didn't fit anything what we were looking for in the zoning administrator. So we had several discussions with Peter, and some members of the DRB and Planning Commission also had discussions with him. And so I kind of proposed to him to tweak the job a little bit and kind of make it more manageable for him, take away some of his reluctance to it. And so over the course of time in these discussions, he's sort of come around to the idea that he could handle it as long as we can fill the zoning administrator assistant position and take some load off of that way. And so he's willing to throw his hat into the ring at this point. So I've talked with the Planning Commission, they're in favor of it. Tim is here representing the DRB, and he's in favor, and I'm sure he'll mention that in a minute. So we are hopeful that you will appoint Peter as a zoning administrator.
Now, the process as I remember it is kind of a weird one, because the zoning administrator really works more closely with development review. But the Planning Commission has to make a recommendation. Do we have a formal recommendation?
We have their verbal
Okay.
recommendation.
That's good
And
enough.
Megan was here last meeting,
Yes.
if you remember, and she was in support of it too.
Yeah. Okay, so they recommend to us, we make the appointment, and then the final piece of this whole convoluted thing is that person then becomes an employee, which falls under your jurisdiction as far as
Right.
employee-related.
And in 3 years, it comes back to you again at the same.
Yeah. So Peter has been filling that spot. Tim, any comments?
He's been good. He's one to learn. I mean, I've been spending a lot of time with him, because I've been through a lot of zoning administrators and learned a lot. So I'm really helping him out a lot. We've done a few COs together and picked up a few things that might have been missed, but I'll spend time with him until he's on his feet and running, and I think it'd be good. I mean, we don't have, like Scott said, we had 2 other people that we interviewed, and neither one of them had any zoning experience. We had tried, the idea was one of them, we were trying to get in on maybe a temporary basis, see if she'd come in part-time and work with Peter and go to the meetings, and she decided to stay with her other job. So we don't really have any applicants at this time. He definitely does need help though. not as far as, what he knows and what he can do on the job, but there's a lot of things he does. He's, you know, the cemetery, 911, health officer. So there's a lot of other duties that he does, not specifically related to the zoning. And I hope that we do find someone, and he's, you know, he's willing to, and he said to me that if we do find someone that is better qualified than him, in the process of hiring an administrator or assistant, he'd be willing to step down and go back to the assistant and have this other person take over. So I think that's, you know, pretty much I think that's the best of both worlds, because we have to get an assistant anyways. And if we get an assistant that turns out to be he or she's really good, then, you know, you could go that route as well, flop into that position.
I like the idea of keeping an individual that has at least some institutional knowledge with what we're doing here in town. And one of the things that I've observed over the last year is that we've, no fault of anybody, any of the good employees that are working with us now, but we've lost a lot of the institutional knowledge that existed in town hall. I was talking to Doug Kilburn the other day, and he said he thinks that he has the most institutional knowledge of any employee in the building, and that's probably true through his long tenure with the town. Anita certainly has been here a long time, but we still have some open positions, and from our perspective, and trying to maybe squeeze a little tighter on the budget to get us through the year, that's not a terrible thing, but we need to get those positions filled. I think it's putting an extra burden on the good people that we do have. But again, that's new people coming in. We're lucky to have Scott, who has a lot of experience in the position as town manager that he can bring to here, but and through guys like Tim and myself that have been in these positions for way too long, we can bring a little bit of that institutional knowledge, but I think we need to make ourselves available like you are with Peter in this arrangement. So I appreciate that. You know
That's
what
good,
this
because
means.
he does.
When's your term up?
I don't know.
But you do realize that you're never going to be able to leave. This is like a Hotel California.
But he's good, because the one good thing about Peter is as far as the applicants, a lot of the people I've heard from, he treats them well.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I've heard the same thing.
I think that's a big thing for a zoning administrator, not to be too hard on them and to try to work with them. And he'll come and talk to me, which most of the zoning administrators did. If they had a question, we'd sit down and talk about it before we got to a point where it was too late. And I think he's good in that respect.
Good.
And hopefully, if we get an assistant, they'll be the same. You know.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So how is enforcement? Because biggest problem I think facing the town, in this arena, is enforcement. Biggest problem facing the state is statute enforcement. Mm-hmm. We're really good at making rules, but it's tough to get out there and actually enforce it. And which brings up another question I'm remembering, and maybe Scott knows the answer to this. Can you deputize members of the DRB or Planning Commission to help with enforcement?
Oh, I don't
Have you ever
believe
seen
you
that?
can. I've never seen that.
I don't. Talking to the attorney, I don't think we can. I think
You
it's
can't do anything to
I think
help him,
it's up to the zoning
just the zoning administrator.
administrator and/or assistant. Not,
Yeah, the state
Because we are the board of
statute is pretty tight on that particular position.
you know,
But if I can address the enforcement issue just briefly, Greg. Peter had been reluctant to do the enforcement aspect of it as he was the zoning administrator assistant. He is now, as we evolve towards the zoning administrator, he is ready to move forward with the enforcement. I know one of the issues recently has been that garage down by Fireflies. There was some issues down there.
Yeah.
and, you know, Peter's issued a letter. We've gotten Merrill involved now, and so fines are gonna start to be accrued within 10 days from that letter, which was last week. So there's action happening on the enforcement front. I think he was just a little reluctant to get into that. You know, it really wasn't his role until you guys certify him as zoning administrator.
Yeah, and I didn't know, and I think that if I know that was a difficult part of the task, and mostly with signs, you know, little things, not necessarily big stuff. I don't
It's
think
a fine line.
we can have, you know, ticketing officers running around.
I have seen him or heard that he's pulled out a few signs.
He was
that
down there the
stuck-
other day.
Yeah, yanking signs out. So,
Really?
All right, boy, that's,
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, I think once he gets the position, he will, and he's talked to me about it too.
Oh.
He's on board with doing what it takes.
Yeah.
And you got a good point, because, you know, we spend a lot of time, you know, drafting up findings and going through a hearing and coming up with what they're supposed to do. And it's, if they're not going to do what we require and nobody does anything about it,
Right.
why even bother going through the whole process, you know? And that's been a hard part. Not just on this one instance, but there's been a few other things that it is kind of tough.
Right.
And, you know, you gotta be fair to everybody if you do, and that's the one thing with enforcement, if you're gonna enforce, whether it's a sign, a flag, whatever you're doing, you can't pick and choose. If we're not gonna have flags, or if we're not gonna have signs, or if we're not gonna allow parking here or there, or whatever, you gotta be consistent with everybody across the board. You can't pick and choose just because you don't like this person or you think this person's a lot of line. You know, once we come up with a law or regulation, you gotta make sure the regulation you're putting in place, you're gonna be able to enforce it. You don't wanna make a regulation that you can't enforce or is too hard to enforce. And that's,
Well, maybe instead of deputies, you and others might be able to gently remind applicants of what the findings were, and as a precursor to any fines or letters from the ZA. So that might be something we could do, just make it informal, and because I think that might go a long way to.
I think most people fully intend to comply with their conditions of their permit. There's two different types of violations. There's things that slip through the cracks. You know, somebody didn't realize that they had to do it this way and they need to be reminded. Then there's other ones where people choose to not comply with a certain aspect of it. They're both violations. And I think if we're consistent in the way that we deal with these things, we won't see as many violations because people will know that we're intending to enforce our regulations. And way back when I was on the planning commission, we wrote the ordinance ourselves. And then we received applications and heard the applications ourselves and granted permits. And we got to see exactly how our ordinance that we conceived worked in practical applications. And we've lost that connection at this point. We've got a planning commission that drafts ordinances, and then we have you trying to apply that to an actual application. And the planning commission, when we were doing applications, we had the benefit of knowing legislative intent, which is a term for, you know, what were we thinking when we drafted this. You don't have that knowledge. You don't know what the intent was. All you can do is read it, and that's a piece that's never really worked with the two different boards doing this. And I've mentioned it before, and I'm trying to figure out a way to see if there's some way to open up a connection between the planning commission and of course the logical connection would be the staff people that work for the town, that actually attend meetings and understand what's going on with both different boards. If the planning commission has their own staff person and the DRB has their own staff person, they have to somehow integrate in the office. So there's a piece of that we need to be able to figure out how to make it be more efficient. And I think as we draft new ordinances, I would be willing to solicit input from DRB as the people who implement that ordinance, whether they think we're headed in the right direction or not.
Well, hopefully Peter, and I did talk to him about that as well, and hopefully he will go to attend the planning board meetings as well, our meetings, and again, it's a time thing for him, because if he
Yep.
got, if he gets an assistant, that'll free up some of his time to do these extra meetings and whatnot, but I think it's a good thing for him, or whoever our zoning administrator is, to go to those meetings, because they know what we go through during our meeting and doing what we do, and they could talk to the planning board and say, hey, I don't think this makes sense, or it does make sense, then they come back to our board and say what we think, or why, if you're going to change something in the town plan for a reason, what is the reason for it? Is there a reason for it, or are we doing something wrong and that's why we're changing it, or are we just changing it to change it? And maybe sometimes just changing things to change them might not be the best thing. Maybe it is, I don't know. But if we all talk about it, if both boards talk about it, because if you change something on the planning board level, it might affect us, and it might be the type of thing we can't enforce, or we can't make work. Because some things work, you gotta have a little give and take on everything. You just can't, it's not all black and white. There's always a gray area, and it's probably a good idea to have a gray area, because then you can make a decision on something rather than having it.
That has been a contentious discussion the whole time I've worked in municipal government. Do you have flexibility, or do you have rigidity in your ordinances? If there's flexibility, it opens the door for treating someone differently than you might treat somebody else. If you have flexibility, there has to be some sort of direction and parameters as to when you will allow that flexibility. If it's and if it's too rigid, of course, somebody comes in and that set of rules doesn't work for them, and they can explain why, but you've made it too rigid so you can't adapt to what their needs are. But we've gone back and forth and back and forth. There was a time when we built in more flexibility into the ordinance, and it seemed like that didn't work. So we made it all very cut and dried, and then that didn't work, and then we've been through this cycle several times now. But yeah, in a perfect world, it'd be nice to be able to have a little bit of discretion. But how do you base your decision on what?
Well, we do in a sense that we have waivers.
Yeah.
Waivers and variances, so we can, if they meet certain criteria, they might not have to do X to get to.
And I think that's the key, having some criteria that needs to be met in order to be able to avail yourself of the waiver or whatever you want to call it. Steve, you had something you want to say?
Yeah, I think that we're on the right track, but I think it should be in those job descriptions of that zoning administrator that needs to happen. It's unfortunate, it needs to be part of the communication that isn't there that you're concerned with. The thing that I think we need to be careful of is that we've seen in the past is that person influencing some way these decisions. And that's what we have to, you have to offer constructive criticism and positive, not this is what we should do. I think that I personally, I really think it should be mandatory for that zoning administrator, this is part of your job. My other concern is that, too, the deputy that you're talking about, the assistant, can you segregate the responsibilities and make the assistant the enforcer? And your zoning administrator is the administrator. That's what they do. I think that might work better. They're gonna.
It depends on. sometimes you have to let the individual that you've hired define the position to a degree. It takes us I mean, you can have expectations. This is the kind of person we're gonna get, and they will be able to assume these roles, and then that perfect person is not available. You have to adjust your thinking, and ultimately you may have to hire somebody that doesn't have those skills, and so there should be a job description, but as far as taking care of the little details, that is really dependent on who you get to fill that position. And yes, they have to be able to check all the big boxes, but they might not be able to. Whoever you get as an assistant may not be able to be an enforcer. And an assistant zoning administrator, I believe, has all the authority of a zoning administrator under state statute. So theoretically, that could happen if you could get the right person. So what we want to do, and I don't think we've done it yet, is to appoint Peter Brabazon as zoning administrator.
Great.
I'll make a motion to appoint Peter Brabazon as the zoning administrator.
Second.
I think we've already discussed it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's.
Thank him very much.
That's
Yeah.
5-0.
Yeah.
I'm really happy.
Yeah.
I, as everyone else, approached Peter on several different occasions to say, hey, how's it going? How you feeling about taking on the job full-time? And he was always a little bit, I'm not really sure. And I'm glad that he's able to get comfortable with it, because I think he can do it.
We have a question.
Yeah, Sylvia.
I don't know if this is appropriate at this time, but
I'm gonna say
you can
probably
put it
not.
under other business. But you know, on Main Street right now, in that really busy section of Thai Basil and the upstairs breakfast place. and
Christo's, yeah.
Christo's,
Yeah.
and right through there. I don't think pickup trucks should be allowed. They stick out too
In that angle parking.
far. In that angle, they don't, it's a problem. You have to sort of wait till you see the oncoming traffic. Whether there's enough room for you to move, or whether you wait until that traffic passes and then it's open and you can pull out and around them.
Yeah.
I don't think.
No, I don't disagree with you.
Well, you talk about enforcement, this is a concrete.
Well, but we don't have any kind of a regulation as to what type of vehicle to
There's a
park
couple of
there.
signs that say small cars
Yeah.
only.
The ones on the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Right.
ones on the end that are
Yeah.
smaller, that you can't pull in quite
But you
as far.
see Suburbans in there all the time.
Yeah. Well, we used to have Ruth Cook to take care of that. I got a chuckle out of Steve.
With the meters,
And she was our meter maid.
You know, I know that.
But we had meters, and
I want to do that.
but
But that doesn't cover the topic of the.
No, I know, I get it.
Arrangement of the street now, especially with the seating and all that.
Yeah.
That's taken place.
We do have-
It's very narrow.
we do
there.
have a couple of spaces on the very, what I call the northern end, because it's the north-south route, it's actually the eastern end, that are for smaller vehicles only. But the rest of them are, there's no.
Well, I never noticed that, but I just noticed the pickup trucks there.
Yeah.
And even up by, what is the avocado pit or whatever they call that place? That's particularly bad because the FedEx truck or UPS truck sometimes is there too.
And they just double park out in the travel way.
Well, they do what they have to do wherever they do it.
Didn't we talk about looking at that whole area and reconfiguring the sidewalks and the parking to parallel anyway? I mean, that, you know.
We talked about that back in 1960,
This was like 2 weeks ago. I was talking about 2
and
weeks ago.
we're still talking about it.
Those Bill's dream.
Yeah.
There's been all kinds of ideas. I would say that we're not any closer to resolving that issue today than we were in 1960.
Well, something to think about in terms of saying no pickup trucks should park on Main Street, get the word out. They can park in the other parking facilities, and now that, even though it's a little bit of a walk, it's better than to have that pressure of
You know what?
those tails sticking out.
We'll check into that and see if there's a way to restrict that to
We
smaller
gotta
vehicles.
move it along a little bit
I
here.
don't know off the top of my head. Steve?
That brings something up, because last year, wasn't there a budget for somebody to walk and enforce things like that downtown? Wasn't there some money in a budget?
We talked about having a
You're gonna
police
hire
officer
somebody?
on a bicycle, a police
Yeah, there
officer on a
was.
bike.
And I spoke to Jamie Blanchard about it, and they had put the advertisement out for somebody to hire, but nobody applied for it, and they
Right.
didn't get it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it's that enforcement type issue?
Well, but what Sylvia's just talking about isn't really an enforcement issue because we allow pickup trucks to park there. We would have to disallow them before it would become an enforcement issue.
But in the fine.
Right now, they're allowed to. I
And
mean,
the
there's no
fine-
restriction on any length of vehicle. And
Right,
I mean, it makes sense that somebody wouldn't pull in there with a
and the fine isn't
30-foot
heavy
camper.
either,
But,
right? The fine if
Fine.
they're parking wrong down
parking
there?
fees are set, parking violations fees are set by the state and they were ridiculously cheap the last time I looked. It's like a $5.
So they're not effective.
Yeah, for $5, they'll say, hey, I'll park here. I mean, that's, wherever these people come
Right.
from, that's cheap parking, you know? It's kind of silly.
Well, we don't charge any place to park. How can
If
you
somebody
say
parks
cheap parking?
in a handicap space and they don't have a handicap designation on their vehicle, or if they park in a place where it says no parking, they'll get a ticket. But by state statute, that ticket is $5, and they're just gonna say, hey, I'll park here for $5. It's, I mean,
I don't think anyone ever gets tickets. I mean, I've literally never gotten a parking ticket.
have
Well,
you
yeah.
parked, did you park in a place where you shouldn't have parked?
Maybe.
It's always been a problem though.
You know what?
downtown.
We have made a commitment to talk with the police department on a regular basis. This is something that we should talk about with them, see if there's any thoughts. They're the ones that would deal with traffic flow and parking in the downtown. They might have some good ideas. And then ultimately it would come back here.
I just had a quick question too, not related to that, and I hate to screw up your agenda, but is there any way you could go to 9? Real quick, because I've got to get going, but I don't, if your agenda's pretty strict, I don't want to do that.
No,
I don't think that'll take too long.
so
Yeah. Skip the 7 and 8.
Well, because I should get going, because I got a
Okay.
meeting tomorrow night, but I
All
don't know if you could just,
let me take a look and see what you're asking here.
Sweeney property.
Authorize.
Okay, yes, because you've been working with
Let's do
this.
it.
I agree. Let's if we're done, we are done with 6. Let's skip to agenda item 9, and this is there's a story that goes with this. The select board had previously authorized $150,000 to purchase the Sweeney property. It's directly adjacent to the town shed property. We had entered into an agreement with Mrs. Sweeney, and everything was in order, and she passed away. And things kind of fell apart from there. There are family members, but the property was heavily mortgaged. It went into foreclosure. The bank has held off on the sale of the property with expectation that we would step in and buy it, but we recently became aware of a second mortgage on the property. And the purchase price for the property, in order to get it from the bank, instead of $150,000, may be as much as $164,000. So it may be a $14,000 additional expense. The bank is not in a position where they want to negotiate on this, and we've had that discussion. But we can purchase this property for $14,000 more than we had authorized. The suggestion is that we might use ARPA funds in the amount of $14,000 to put this together. These kind of opportunities come about very frequently. The town has pretty much maximized our use of the town shed property. This is a very logical extension. It's right there next door, extending eastwardly toward the end of Townshend Road. Personally, I feel that it's worth the extra expense because we're not going to get another shot at it, but it's up for discussion at this point. Did you have something you wanted to add, Tim?
Well, I just want to say, you know, we've been working on it for a year plus, a year and a few months now. And a lot of the addition was interest and all that finance charges, whatever, from the bank. And I've been trying to get people to keep moving on it. And thank you very much, Scott, for your persistence on it, because without him, we wouldn't even be in this situation now. Because it was going up a couple of weeks ago on Wednesday for auction. And the attorney got a stay on the auction, which I don't know what it was for 30 days. I don't know what the amount was, but of days. But we were lucky because we probably wouldn't have the chance. And it's really tough. Like Ivan says, you know, it's right next door, and to try to find a piece of property in town to move the town garage to would be almost impossible.
Yeah.
And for the amount of acreage,
You're talking a way more significant
it's gonna be a lot more
expenditure.
money than
We
that.
just built
so.
just the salt shed. You know, we've got a good garage there. It makes sense for us to be where we are, and this is a very logical expansion. And just to be clear, we're working with the bank on this, not with the Sweeney family.
That's correct.
And
So,
in the original agreement, there was paragraph that allowed Mrs. Sweeney to live on the property until she passed or had to go elsewhere. That's gone away at this point, to my knowledge.
that's gone away, but the son, Richard, has been working with us on this project, and he is in hopes that he can work something out with the town, and we're talking about having a discussion with him as
Okay.
soon as we close on the property, which, by the way, is scheduled for Friday this week.
In discussions with Jeff Williams, we don't need the whole property. I mean, we could easily use half of it to expand what we're doing there, and it would give us more than ample space for the foreseeable future. And the little house that exists there could remain. So.
And that's where the kid wants to stay for the,
Yeah.
how old is he?
He's 45, maybe.
The son.
What's the appraised value of that piece item?
I can't tell.
I don't have.
We
it.
had it when we did
had it
this,
when
we did.
Yeah, this has been a while.
I think this is like right around where it appraised.
Yeah, it was around what the assessment was.
164?
Well,
150.
150 was what we were
Really?
talking about. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's probably before they reappraised all.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to know.
Inflation.
I don't go there.
Inflation.
We don't want to see that number at
Now
this
it's
point.
190.
I will say the house brings no value to the property. But it has value to
The kid.
Richie. I mean, he grew up there. He has fond memories. His mother's cat still lives there. He takes care of it. I've talked to Richie too. Knew his father well.
Well, I think the thought was with Jeff, and I've talked to Jeff about it as well, probably the best thing, if that was an option, I mean, obviously, the purchase is the purchase, and then whatever happens after that is up to, you know, the rest of the select board of the town or whatever. But I think one thing that Jeff really would like to see, if he does get the opportunity to stay there, probably should be a fence around. And we did, on the initial offer with Ann, it was basically from the road to the back of the wood burner furnace they've got there, just around the back, pretty small place.
Yeah.
But just the trailer area, so everything all around it, even, you know, to the left-hand, on the road to the left-hand side, probably north side of it, that was still gonna be the town. So pretty much the part that we had offered in was a very small parcel. Basically the trailer, a little bit of lawn and the thing, but not the whole rest of the property.
Yeah.
I think I know that's what we had talked to Ian about.
They just extend that fence, right?
Well, I think they probably, yeah, I'm sure the town will extend the fence all the way out, but I think
Yeah.
they would like a fence around the Richards property, just so things don't get scattered off, and probably for liability for the town too as
Yeah.
well, to keep, you know.
That's a detail that will be worked out at a future date, and like I said, we don't know if,
But again, the main.
we don't know if we're
thing
gonna
is
be
just-
able to come to an
Yeah.
agreement as to
Yeah.
whether Richie can live there or not. He's been very persistent. And his family has quite a history with the town. His grandfather used to, the landfill was just down the road on our property from there. And his grandfather, Dick Sweeney, there was Dick, Richard, and Richie. Dick Sweeney used to manage the landfill there for the town, and had various other capacities with the town. We're talking 1950s, 1960s, so there is a history, and the Sweeney family's been there for a long time. But anyways, what we're talking about here is the purchase of the property. That's a separate issue that'll be dealt with in the future. How do we feel?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the additional money up to the $164,000 to purchase the Sweeney.
If I could make a recommendation to not put a limit on the amount, the per diem is already up over 165,
Oh,
so.
every day, yeah.
That's how it's going. It's not gonna be much more than 165, but I don't have an exact figure, and if you put a cap on it, then it'll be coming out of my
Yeah,
pocket.
when we talked about this just a few days ago, it was a $12,000 increase, and now in our agenda, it's a $14,000 increase, and now here it's a $15,000 increase as of today, so
Okay, but let's cap it at something like 175.
Fine.
Okay,
up to,
175, okay, to a total of 175.
I'll second that.
and the closing would be when?
It's scheduled for Friday.
So 3 more days, don't cost any more money.
Don't talk.
I know, seriously.
Let's get
Tell
up to
them to
lock it in right
draft,
now.
yeah, draft the papers up now.
I went to the bank today to get a wire set up, but they wouldn't do it in advance, so I'm going tomorrow morning.
We'll get it done,
Okay,
okay,
motion a second.
great.
How much is in ARPA?
How much is in ARPA? We have that.
360 something.
Did someone second that motion? I missed it in
Yes.
the minute.
Okay, we had a motion
I second it.
and a second, we have
Yeah.
not, did we take an action yet?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
355.
Thank you.
Is it 255?
It is.
What am I looking at?
And thanks, Scott.
What's the
One-
520?
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your help.
All right, thank you.
You really put it across the board.
Thank you.
That was,
And if you'd come a little sooner, it would have been a little cheaper.
It might be.
See you guys
See you,
later.
Tim. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks, Tim.
so, the bottom line.
Yeah.
I found the bottom
There
line.
you
Yeah,
go.
some of
Wooden
that,
scroll.
yeah, some of that. money.
355, 360.
But it could be more
It could be
depending
more,
Could
on
be more depending on.
Yeah.
what's right.
Some of it has been
allocated but not spent.
allocated but not spent, so. But as far unallocated balance is 355. And we need to spend it.
well, I think that's a good,
I think that's a good use for it.
where it should go to things like that. I mean,
Capital
that's-
items,
We need that,
yeah.
you know?
I get it.
Moving on.
Let's go.
We're on,
Number
We have to go
7.
back
going back
to,
to 7, to review the town audit.
Steve Love is here. Welcome, Steve.
So,
Good to see you
I'd like
again.
introduce Steve Love, who's a longtime friend of mine and business associate for many years. He's done auditing for me in several towns, but he's also audited many other towns besides just Manchester and everything. So it's kind of a sadness that I have to introduce him because he's retiring after this year. So
We've had
I
a
think
long
it's
and.
July
and-
1st, is that right, Steve?
We'll see, it's whenever I get done the open process. It was originally June 16th, and now I'm thinking, well, if I can get done by the end of August, that won't be so bad. But we'll see.
So you have your audited reports in front of you. You probably had received them electronically before this also. And just a brief comment from me, and on page 58, you'd notice that the audit did not identify any deficiencies in internal control considered to be material weaknesses. So that's always good to see in their report. So Steve, if you want to run us through.
Sure, do you want me to go up to the podium or?
There is a microphone on the podium. We don't have a lot of guests online, but they can hear you better if you're at the
Okay.
podium.
Well, the replay will sound better too, if people.
That's true. A lot of people watch it later. And
Usually everyone leaves the room when it gets to the audit, so. So anyway, I figured I wouldn't take too long. It's funny, you talk about how long I've been here, and I was reading that E-Town report dedication to John O'Keefe, and I said, oh, 2007, well, shit, I was there in 2005, so that was the first year I audited you guys, so it's been a while. So anyway, as far as going, I'm just going to go fairly briefly, and if people have questions, I'll try to answer them. It's been a few months since we actually worked. As far as the overall audit results, our opinion, the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. In our opinion, the auditor's report is really the only thing that belongs to Love Cody and Company. Management is responsible for the statements and their content and their accuracy, but we look at them and we have to decide if they're accurately stated. They are. We did not notice any internal control findings as a result of our audit testing. And some of the other things we're supposed to talk to management about, or the select board, is that we did not encounter any difficulties in dealing with management, and we had no disagreements with management with respect to any financial accounting, reporting, or other matters. So that's kind of all the things we're supposed to let you know at the end. As far as the overview of the financials, there's 5 major components to the financials. The independent auditor's report, and as I said, that's the only thing that really belongs to me. You may have noticed that this may be the first or second year that it's been changed, and they start with the opinion as far as some things that they changed just for the sake of changing. Now we're 3 pages where it used to be 2 pages. It goes into more detail on what our responsibility as auditors are and what the responsibilities of management is. So it might have been that way last year as well, but that's fairly new. The second part of the statements was management's discussion and analysis, and while we help in putting together some of the tables, that's really the responsibility of management. And it's kind of a condensed overview of the financials as opposed to all the detail that is in the ensuing 60-some pages. The basic financial statements follow, and those are broken into 2 categories. The government-wide financial statements. Those are, all of the governmental funds are reported in one column, and they're really reported as if it was an accrual basis. So all capital assets and long-term debt are reported, which is not reported in the funds. And then a single column also for the business type activities, water and sewer, and that really is reported the same as it is in the fund statements. So they're on an accrual basis both in the government-wide and the fund statements. And after the government-wide statements are the fund financial statements. So that presents the major governmental funds, and then a single column that combines all the non-major funds of the governmental funds, and then the proprietary funds, the enterprise funds, the water and sewer funds. And then the notes to the financial statements, which are quite lengthy, but provide a lot of detail for some of the balances and transactions in the financial statements. And finally, the 5th part, the other information, including supplemental schedules and our report on internal control, which Scott's already referenced there at the back. We can't say there are no significant deficiencies. We're not allowed to say that, but we can say there are no material weaknesses, but we did not identify any significant deficiencies. So internal controls are good, and they always have been, and sometimes when we've had changes in management, we've had changes in the finance director within a few recent years. So it's good to see that things are, you've got good systems in place where you can deal with transitions like that and not have it adversely affect your financial statements, your ability to keep the accounting records. So some highlights from the current year statements on the government-wide statements on the governmental activities. Your total assets and deferred outflows are approximately $18.4 million, and that's compared to about $18.5 in the prior year. Your total liabilities and deferred inflows are approximately $4.4 million, and that's pretty consistent with the prior year. The net position is approximately $14 million, and that's a decrease from the prior year of about $190,000 for the governmental funds. On the business type activities.
Steve, if I might just jump in on that one.
Yeah.
So that position, You do a lot of towns. I mean, is there a guidelines or parameters as to how we should fall on our net position, assets versus debt, that sort of thing?
I don't know that there's really any hard and fast guidelines, and part of that is that you're somewhat at the mercy of how things like the Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement System Plan goes. That fluctuates a lot. This year, the net pension liability decreased, but the deferred inflows increased, so the net effect on your expenses was great. You know, it's easier to look at that on the fund side than it is the government-wide statements, I think, really. Because you've got so many more influences on the government-wide statements between having the capital assets added in there and long-term liabilities.
Yeah, I'm always interested in, of course, we have debt, that, you know, new incurred debt, and we have debt that's maturing and falling off the end of the list constantly. But we always ask, you know, what would be for a town this size and with the assets that we have and so forth and so on, what would be where should that debt be? And I get, anybody I ask gives me a different answer, so there's no good answer.
Yeah, you're fairly, on the governmental funds, your debt is not excessive at all, and on the proprietary funds, that's so much driven by the capital assets, almost everyone's going to have fair good amount of bonded debt for capital improvements in sewer systems and water systems. So again, no hard, fast rules, but I'd say you guys are in pretty good shape as far as that goes.
Good enough for me. Thank you.
So for the business, moving on to the business type activities, their total assets were $13 million, down a little bit from $13.2 million in the prior year. Total liabilities are about $5.8 million, which is a decrease from $6 million in the prior year. So the liabilities went down a bit there. And net position was at about $7.3 million, which was an increase of about $69,000. On the fund financial statements, I really looked more at the governmental funds, but the total governmental fund assets were at $4.6 million, including general fund at $1.2 million, the CERT fund at about $1.1 million, and other governmental funds that total $2.3 million. And that again is the aggregate of many of your special revenue and capital projects funds. The fund balance in the general fund at $224,000, that was a decrease of $33,000. And the CERT fund decreased about $78,000 to $1.1 million. And that was primarily a result of the decline in market value on the investments, which I'll talk about a little bit more. The fund balance of the other governmental funds increased in total by $615,000 to the end of the year at about $1.8 million. That also includes the receipt of ARPA funds of about $526,000, and that's set up in a new, as you know, it's a new fund in the special funds this year.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I saw that there was a line in there about cash balances and then what percentage of the cash balances were insured versus special insurance. Can you, I understand the FDIC limits, but just kind of given what's going on in the financial system, can you go into that into a little bit of detail?
So they're collateralized outside of the FDIC?
With other banks, so they just do the...
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Where the banks hold securities in your name to offset your balances.
Got it.
And in the past, you might not have worried too much about that, but
Right.
in the last few months,
Yeah, okay.
that bank's failing, so it is important to have, you know, that's why that's an important disclosure. It has been for a long time.
Yeah.
But when things are all rosy, then who cares if you got $500,000 uninsured? But
Right.
you do when the bank fails. So.
Thank you.
Sure. Where was I? The fund balance and the proprietary funds, the net position of the water fund increased about $92,000, while the net position of the sewer fund decreased by $23,000. And again, that is driven to some extent by the securities. And that's not your problem alone. I've seen some real big drops in market value, which again are unrealized losses, so it's not like you've lost yet, but and the markets have certainly come back some since June 30, I believe. And then lastly, I'd just like to talk about a few of the significant transactions. As far as significant capital asset additions this year, we had the start of the Bartonville Road water main replacement project. Spent about $430,000 through June 30 of 22 on that. And I believe that's about a $750,000 project, or at least it was at the outset. The Barnumville Road pavement was about $189,022. We did get a John Deere grader and an F-550 dump truck added in there for the governmental funds. 2 police vehicles, including a K-9 vehicle for Officer Moose. It's a nice addition to the force, I understand. And that was, again, those were funded in portion from the police department reserve fund as well, and some of that from monies, I believe. As far as debt for this year, we did issue a five-year, $180,000 note for the acquisition of a new fire truck. And we, I already mentioned, we received ARPA funds for about $526,000, and that is recorded in the special revenue fund. And then just to touch briefly on the decline in market value of investments, in the governmental funds, the actual investment earnings, interest and dividends, were about $34,265, and those were offset by unrealized losses of $242,873. So you have a net loss on the governmental funds and the government-wide statements of $208,600. And in the proprietary funds, you had investment earnings of just under $26,000, but unrealized losses of $210,000, so you had a net loss of $184,708. And roughly about $393,000 collectively combined loss in market value during the year. But again,
That's the key word there is unrealized. And
Right.
depending on what the market does, if you don't spend it, you haven't lost it,
right, and
and it may rebound.
well, with any of it, we're all.
Do you know what that percentage is off the top of your head, like as a rate of return?
Oh, as far as, no, I don't.
Okay. It's okay.
Is Greg, are you waving your hand or knocking on your screen to get our attention?
He was glazing over with the auditing report.
He's going like this, stop.
This is the fascinating part of this position.
So, that's really all I had for you, if that's, works for you. If I'd known I was gonna be doing this earlier, I'd have done a nice fancy PowerPoint thing like I did a few years back. We didn't have time for that. You know, part of me said, hey, you know, I'm retired.
You don't have to impress us anymore because we're not going to hire you.
Hey, if you don't like this, fire me. It has been a pleasure working with the town and the staff here for, 17 years. But honestly, I felt kind of guilty telling some of my audit clients, town of Wilmington, they put out RFPs and got 18 responsives, but only 2 that put in a bid. So, and Scott, I knew worked with Scott at Wilmington as well. So it's tough. There's not, there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of people getting to be my age and dropping out of the business, and a lot of people are just trying to stay away from governmental accounting just because it's one of the more complex accounting systems. We're not accounting system.
These are interesting times, Steve. We're going through winding up a reappraisal of our whole grand list, and the state has recognized that just about every town in the state has to do a reappraisal because of the crazy real estate market that we've experienced. And there are not enough appraisers to do that, obviously. It's going to be we can't get every town reappraised in a 15-year period.
Right.
It's not going to happen. And of course, Manchester's out ahead, which may or may not be a good thing because it's going to put us out of whack with everybody else. And there's supposed to be adjustments that can be made. And actually now they're talking about a bonus adjustment that might be available for towns that actually do get a reappraisal in time. We actually might get our CLA adjusted a point or two because we did the reappraisal. So that's kind of interesting on the statewide property tax side. It's not just in the in the accounting world. It's everywhere.
Well, in the AICPA, they're having a real shortage of people coming in the pipeline. There's just, people are not going for the accounting degree, and even those that are, look at public accounting and say, well, I don't want to do that, those guys. Well, it used to be, 70, 80 hours a week during the busy season, and, these people, everyone wants to value their personal time and time with the family, and So it's really hard to, you know, a lot of firms are making concessions to that, but if they're not coming out of school and, you know, I do a lot of peer reviews of other firms, and everyone has the same issue with staff shortages and too much work. I've had governmental RFPs that crossed my desk for the last year. I haven't, well, even 2 years, because this year, you know, it's going to be retiring within a short time, but, you know, can't take on more work than you can do, and unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So if you wanted to be a governmental auditor, now's a good time to jump in, because the prices you're going to get.
Well, you've painted it as such a wonderful profession.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's going to be a good position or a good field to be in if you want to deal with the.
If you're smart enough.
If you want to do it.
Well, and have the
Yes.
ability to deal with all the change, because there is.
Yeah, but they want the computer to do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, yeah, artificial intelligence, they're
we
talking
want to
about.
thank you for painting that rosy picture, but we actually have a couple more questions.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just while we have you here and on your way up, but I kind of wanted to hear, is there anything that you've come across just in all the towns that you work with that has been an issue with audits, like anything having to do with like ransomware or other things that we should be kind of thinking about, or best practice kind of things that we should be thinking about going into a new, with working with a new auditor or
I have had at least one town who did have an issue with ransomware a couple of years back. They fortunately did not end up having a real issue with that, because they had the proper IT systems back up where they did not have to shell out a lot of money to these folks. As far as issues that our towns are facing, just keeping, what I think is going to be a big issue for a lot of towns coming forward is with the, again, all the ARPA monies and all the federal funds that have come out, we're going to have a lot of towns that have never had to have a single audit before. And the single audits are, if you haven't had one, most towns are not going to go through it very well. I mean, it's going to be because they won't have the right purchasing policies. They won't have, and half the times people don't know what the requirements are, even though the grantor should be telling them, but they don't necessarily do that. So I think that's going to be a big issue for a lot of towns. Not so much for you folks, because you're used to, not every year, but periodically you do get into the level where you need a single audit. So, but that's a whole different piece to an audit that if we haven't done one before, then it's not going to be good. So, but yeah, other than that, I think, well, to some extent, towns are also having issues with staffing.
Yeah.
It's just, towns, businesses, not-for-profits, everyone's in the same boat where, I don't know where, you got the people who say, I can't find a job, well, look at all those help wanted signs. I mean, who knows? I don't know what the answer to that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
I have one.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me jumping in here. Steve, on our balance sheet, the governmental balance sheet, page 14, we have, under the fund balances, we have unassigned funds. And this is a negative number. Can you explain that to me? Because I usually see unassigned funds as basically unspent carryover from the year before. I didn't know how we'd have a negative number there.
So that basically is just driven by what is restricted and was considered non-spendable, and the non-spendable includes the prepaid expenses and the tax sale land acquisition up above. So the prepaid expenses, you're not going to end up having to use cash to, in other words, that's expenses that have already been paid for. So that, as long as that number is bigger than the unassigned fund balance, I wouldn't be too concerned about it.
Okay. I got you. So
That's
that's
not-
190,000 prepaid expenses. I got
Yeah.
you.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Good catch.
Well, I have one last question. Steve's company always throws the greatest Christmas parties. Just wondering if this year is going to be the last big fling or not.
Well, Scott, Frank and I had a discussion somewhere around COVID with, wow, there is one benefit to COVID. We couldn't have it then, and we've been trying to figure out a way to kill that thing for something. One, it costs us $5,000 or so to do that, and two, you start to get to worry. I mean, there's a fair bit of drinks available, and you do start to worry about, somebody going to get hurt on the way home, and then, so That was a benefit of COVID. It gave us a good excuse to stop.
Maybe a private party, I don't know.
Steve Nichols has a question.
It's just a comment, and I'm not, Ivan, you and I have discussed this, that, the taxpayer and myself, we entrust the select board in managing our financial process, et cetera. And looking, I haven't looked at this audit. Is it online? I couldn't pull it up, Scott.
I'm not sure if it's attached to our website or not yet. We do have it electronically available, so we can
Okay.
easily send it to you.
The audit that you do, I think, would you read that comment again on the front of that audit that you write?
The opinion at the end?
Yeah,
So the one I brought up earlier,
Yeah.
that's on page 58. It just says that the audit did not identify any deficiencies in internal control considered to be material weaknesses. Prior to that description, they explain what a material weakness is. So
Now-
he's recognizing that.
my question would be, if there is an issue with the financials, whether there's pilferage or mishandling of funds or miscalculations, what have you, does this audit that the town specifies that you do answer those questions?
Our auditing procedures are designed to be sure there's no material misstatements in the financial statements. That doesn't mean that there couldn't be a fraud that we didn't find. So if somebody wiped off with $500, chances are we would not find that, especially if there's more than one person involved. We do test internal controls for the disbursement function and payroll functions. But again, it's all, we look at things as materiality. I know a lot of town auditors, I remember years ago that, well, we could be missing 10 cents here. We don't look for 10 cents, so.
No, I understand that, but if there was a $500 mistake somewhere, okay, what would you recommend to this board, an option for them to take? They may not want to take it for $500, who knows, but if...
Well, there's always going to be, we propose a lot of adjusting journal entries during the course of the audit. So yeah, we find things that need adjustment, but if they need adjustment not through fault or defalcation or, then as long as management's willing to make the adjustments, then that's fine. And we propose adjustments smaller than what materiality is to the financials for sure. Because most towns want us to know, hey, okay, if you found a $500 adjustment to this, or you didn't pick up a capital asset for the government-wide statements, we'll make that proposal for the adjustment. So, the only thing I worry about or bring to the attention of the select board is if we did find something that looked like, if it is fraud or something to that effect, so.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
I think the level of review, first of all, the level of control that we have internally is pretty good. It'd be pretty hard for somebody to defraud the town without it being picked up internally. But I think the level of review that we're seeing here, if there was a significant item that raised a red flag, it would be, my understanding is the auditors would say, hey, look, we have an issue here and we need to do some further review. In the absence of that red flag, you get a statement at the end, much like Scott read, that it appears that everything is the way it should be. I'm comfortable. I've been comfortable with Steve for 17 years. He's done a great job. He has made recommendations and adjustments over the years. Back when Ruth was the financial person, Ruth was very provincial and had a lot of ownership of the finances, and she took it very personally when something didn't quite work out. And there's always a couple of suggestions there, and she kind of took that as a personal attack. But you don't look at a portfolio this large and not find some kind of little adjustments that
Oh, yeah.
need to be made. And it's,
We anticipate that. Sometimes that's, you know, the people we work with are expecting us to, all right, well, you'll tighten that up for us, right? It's not that they're doing anything wrong, it's just that that's the expectation of them. Hey, you know, we may not be the best at figuring out what the prepaid or accrued or prepaid vacation or whatever, you know, and they'll look more or less for our help. We can't get so involved that we take on management responsibilities because then we lose our independence, that kind of thing. But, yeah,
But you're
we do-
routinely testing for things like, if a new vendor gets added, for example, like there's gotta be a way to know that that's like something that you have to, you know, mark and know about, like, or different kind of tests like that, so that financial things would come up before they become problematic.
Right, yeah, I mean, we do both analytical reviews, and like I say, we do a test of cash disbursements for expenditure tests, is 40 items, which is considered statistically, you know, if there is an issue with the internal control system, we theoretically should pick one up in that. That when combined with analytical procedures and other substantive procedures, we do confirmations of debt and cash balances, and so,
Right.
yeah, you should be fairly confident.
Yeah.
and these are generally accepted accounting practices.
Yes.
World according to GAAP.
There you go. Generally accepted governmental accounting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think this board is more involved than many in the minutia of the operation in the application of the budget, and we take a great pride in that. We have a pretty good idea of what's going on, and we look forward to your review with great anticipation that there's not going to be a lot of criticism there, because if there were, I would take it to heart personally. But that's your job, and I would.
And that's, and, you know, ultimately, the responsibility lies with you when you get right down to it. You know, management reports to you, and management's responsible for the financial statements. And that is something that varies quite a bit from one entity to another, the level of involvement of the board. And you see it, and particularly a lot in the not-for-profit organizations we work with, some just don't pay enough attention to the accounting side of things, and that's unfortunate because they really need to. Or, you know, I've had in commercial times, oh, I don't look at the balance sheet. Well, if you don't look at the balance sheet, you don't know that your income statement's right. So, but people don't quite get that sometimes. So.
That may not be the top skill of the person that's running that business, especially if it's a small business. And you mentioned it earlier, not everybody's interested in being a bean counter. You know,
Right.
they have some other skill that puts them in that position.
I know we take offense at the term bean counter. Spent all those years in college.
It's probably been a long time since anybody actually counted beans.
We don't do that anymore. Although we did have that conversation not too long ago with another CPA, thinking back to the years, many years ago. I quit smoking like 20 years ago, but I can remember being in Bluefield, West Virginia, at a round table here, 6 auditors, ashtrays, cups of coffee, 14-column paper. Oh, I've got a hole burnt in it because it went over the ashtray. Oh gosh. Oh my God, that's not like that anymore. What made me think of that was we had a guy doing tree work in front of the office here, and the guy come here with this chainsaw, he's got a cigarette lit. He's got both hands holding the saw, and he's a chain smoker. He's had a cigarette burning the whole time.
Oh my goodness.
For a couple of hours. It's like, oh, no, I didn't do that.
Oh, we're glad you quit. And
Oh, yeah,
glad you
yeah,
stuck
I
with
will.
it. So we're going to miss you. Your firm has done a great job as the accountant for the town, and we've looked around, and you're be difficult to replace.
Well, thank you.
And that's a first. I don't think there's ever been applause for the auditors at a meeting that I've attended.
All right, well, if we're good then?
Thank you.
We're good.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure working with the town all these years, and I truly will miss it. I'll miss part of what I love about my job is the people I work with, and I'm not behind the same desk every day because I'm not in the field working with the clients. And I'll miss that, but I'll really enjoy it.
Now, Ivan, have we got recommendations?
That's the next agenda item.
Next agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
okay.
Feel free to
There's
come
a-
back and join our meeting anytime.
Agenda's right over
Thank you.
We'd love to hear your input on
Well, yeah, but I'll be out fishing or again, or.
On your motorcycle.
In between those
A
times.
lot of, I have too many hobbies and not enough time, so I am looking forward to that part of the time. I'll miss the people I work with.
And before you go, Scott, I hope we, if you make a note, and this would probably be another business too, but that we include his participation for 17 years in the next town report.
Okay.
All righty?
Yeah.
You may not be able to
First time
cover,
auditor
but
was mentioned.
no, I think we should recognize what you've done for the town. So I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
That's very nice to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fun. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, and the segue into the next agenda item is possibly award a contract with a new auditing firm.
So you should have.
Oh, we probably should act on the
Do we have to?
Do we have to?
No,
on the audit?
you don't have to accept it.
Okay.
We don't have to act.
So assuming you're not gonna act on it, you could, I mean, it doesn't hurt, doesn't do anything. It's independent.
Have we acted before to accept it?
I don't
we
think
have.
so. I don't know. It's an independent audit. That's a good question. I don't know.
I mean,
I
because
don't
if you
remember.
don't, if you didn't accept it, what would that say?
I think we did
You wouldn't say
before.
anything.
Did we accept?
I think we usually,
We did just to protect you all, that it was right,
I-
you know.
I'm fine with taking an action if you want to accept the report of our auditing company.
I seem to recall that we used to accept it. I'm not sure if we took responsibility.
I know, I don't know if you want to say that.
You don't wanna do that.
We definitely, as, on the land trust board, we had to
Yeah.
accept it, but it was different because I was the finance committee.
Yeah, I'm on the finance committee of the Vermont Arts Council, and we will do that, but not necessarily, I don't think the entire body. But
I trust you, Scott. Do we have to accept it or not accept
I
it?
say you don't have to do it.
So then don't do it.
Okay.
it
Yeah,
exists.
why do something we don't have to do?
Right.
All right, I'm good with that.
So, moving on, so we put out an RFP for auditing services. We received several inquiries, but like Steve mentioned, a lot of people are getting out of this business rather than getting into it. So we received 2 actual bids, one from RHR Smith out of their Maine, but they're doing a lot over here in New Hampshire, Vermont nowadays, school districts and towns. And another one from Telling and Hillman. Telling and Hillman is out of Middlebury. I've used them before when I was in Ludlow, and highly recommend them. Now, based on the results, Telling and Hillman was the low bidder at $24,000, and RHR Smith was $35,845.
Even better.
And that was an apples to apples comparison, so I had to verify that a little bit when you get down to it. But Telling and Hillman is great. I'm very glad that they bid. I reached out to them during this process, just kind of saying, did you see this RFP? Would you like to bid on it? And they did, so I'm very excited to have them.
I have a general question for you. My understanding is that if he did great work for 17 years, that's great. But my understanding is that you're not supposed to keep your same auditor for.
We used to go to bid about on a 3-year cycle, and we kept awarding it to Love
Same
Cody,
guy.
whatever the
Yeah.
whatever the name of the firm is, and it's at some point. I don't remember going out to bid in recent years.
I just think best practices is that you're supposed to,
Yeah.
not even just go out to bid, have a different set of eyes and stuff.
Yeah.
Just something just to keep in mind going forward.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think this is a
don't get too close to your,
four-year.
don't get too close to your.
Well, I think we ran into the same sort of situation where there was
No one.
we would have a limited
Right.
number of respondents
Right.
if we tried to go out to bid.
Well, the good thing with the auditing services is they're required to have a peer review.
Yeah.
Steve referenced that.
He did.
So there's, in the back of the report, you'll see a peer review written into there, so you get a different set of eyes that way too.
It's true.
And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, you know, if we choose to go with Hillman,
Tillman and.
Telling and Hillman.
Telling and Hillman,
Tillman and Hillman.
we may wind up going with them
For 17 years?
for 17 years, just because there's not a lot of competition out
Yeah.
there.
Well, I would recommend, I think it's a 4-year deal here. I would recommend going back out with an RFP at the
Yeah.
end of the 4 years.
Right.
We used to do that, and it wasn't that long ago. And it's possible that we have done that on a 4-year cycle.
You know, Heidi, she's got a good point too, because you get a different set of eyes and a different
Yeah.
way of getting at the information,
Yeah.
so.
I know our past town manager was pretty good about adhering to policy on those things. So, I suspect that it's quite possible that we went out to bid and just happened to keep landing on this particular company because they were the one that looked like they'd be the best job for the town. But it would be nice to be able to change from time to time. If to get that fresh set of eyes to talk about. That's the whole reason for an audit.
Right.
Who's the parent accountant for the other R.H.R. Smith from New Hampshire? Who's the proprietary?
The guy? Who's the guy?
Robert Smith is his name. He has lots and lots of auditors working for him. They're large and getting larger. We had them in Ludlow the last 2 years, and the first year they were fine. The second year not so fine.
Okay, so is this something we have to,
We do.
like to make a motion that we award the contract to Telling Hillman PC of Middlebury for the Manchester audit process for the next 4 years?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous, and thank you for your input on that, Scott. I think it was
Sure.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Vermont Alert is Glenn's up there, very
Glenn's
patient.
still there.
Thank you.
patiently waiting.
Right.
That's on route. There we go. All right, and then also, hi Glenn, how you doing?
Good. Am I causing feedback on you?
No, you're okay. Do you want me to unmute Sam also?
Not necessarily. You can share, I think you can share space. My name is Glenn Parent. I'm from Vermont Emergency Management. I am the interim Vermont Alert Administrator. Sam Gilmer there is the new Vermont Alert Administrator, just hired. First day was yesterday. So to come along to be part of this pitch. Sam, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself or anything.
Sure, yeah, I just started a couple days ago, so I'm not really sure how to do everything yet, but if you choose to participate with Vermont Alert, I will be the one helping you in the future. So still learning everything, but in the future, I will be the one you guys go to should you need any help.
Okay.
Sam's an absolutely fantastic guy. We were very pleased to get him, and he's, 2 days he's already doing great. So now we just need to give him a computer. So Vermont Alert is it is the state public safety notification system. We use it at the state level for the VT alert public notifications, and we also use it a lot for internal notifications. So, for example, when the State Emergency Operations Center activates, we use a form of VT alert, and the state has an SOP alert system that it uses for its employees for anything from snow emergencies to whatever else. It works through pretty much any modern delivery channel, so you can get it from your smartphone is the best way to go. You can get emails, it'll send texts, it'll call with mobile phones, and it will also call reverse 911 to any landlines. You guys won't have access to it, but on the state side, we also extend up through Twitter and Facebook, and we can use the integrated public alert and warning system, the IPAWS, I call it the old, beep, this is a test of the emergency alert system, that does, and that's all part of VT Alert, and that includes mobile alerting, wireless alerting systems. So, for example, if there's a tanker truck overturns on Route 7 or something like that, and it's carrying poison gas, we at the state level can trigger something so that everybody in town's mobile phone will go off and let them know that they need to, evacuate to a safe area, whether they've heard of Vermont Alert or not. That's pretty rare. We don't do that very often, but we can do that at the state level. What we're talking about for you guys is one, just making you aware that that's available. And two, if you choose, you can adopt a VT alert for the town of Manchester to use. In that case, you get, if you have the slides that I hand out before I send beforehand, you get those, the left-hand side to go with, the Everbridge app, the email, text, and phone calls. So you can do all of that just by yourself. So, Scott would be able to, or your police chief, or your fire chief, or whoever you appoint would be able to send out those messages on your behalf. For the most part, towns lately have been using that for, like in the latest power outages and snowstorms, they've been using it for like warming centers, and a lot of towns use it for road outages. If you have either a sudden road outage or a planned one, anything that you can say with a straight face is public safety, you can send out that way. It also, a nice thing about the system is that it escalates, and so it lets you confirm and stop getting the messages. So if you've signed up and you have the app and you gave it your email and two text, a work phone and a personal phone, as soon as you acknowledge the message, it will stop. So it might trigger the app, and if you don't respond, it'll send an email, and if you don't respond, it'll text you, and then maybe you say, okay, I got the message, and then it will stop and it won't call you. But if you don't acknowledge the message, because it's a notification system, it's going to keep going, and it will just keep going because it really, really wants to deliver that message. It's like the Terminator. It wants you to get whatever that message is. So, down the bottom of the handout, there are two basic notification schemes. The first one is the most common one that towns want. That's the public broadcast. So that's where you would send out messages, to your residents and to anybody else that's interested in the town of Manchester. And that's for public information. I guarantee you, anything you send out to the town of Manchester is going to go to all the media outlets. So, we've never had a problem with it, but towns just need to be aware that, you don't want to send something joking out there that, your residents will get, but might be rude or anything like that, because it will get to everyone. The other side of it is the group messages, where you can use it internally. So if you wanted to use it for sending a message out to your town staff for whatever reason, you can send it. You can send messages like that. If you have, threats to your staff or something, and you want to circulate that along with a picture of whoever it is that's making the threat, you can send that to all your town staff, and it's kept reasonably private as long as the people you're sending it to don't share it. So that's the group message side. The most common use of that we see for towns is for police forces, particularly for like arranging for shift work and things like that. But some fire departments use it for sending out training. And a fair number of towns use it for things like if you have a volunteer group to staff a shelter, for example, you put all those in a group because those tend to be people from all walks of life, and so you just put them all together in that one group as opposed to trying to use a police chain, a fire chain, or something like that. The last two things I just mentioned is incident commanders can always send out those public alerts. So even if you decide not to adopt it yourself, then you can still use this system just by calling the state watch officer and saying, hey, we'd like you to send out a message about a cooling center that we're going to open on, and then we'll send that. You would send that to the watch officer or Stan or me, and we would send that out. And the last thing is, if you adopt it, it's free for you guys. And all you have to do is say that the town of Manchester adopts it. I believe Scott has the form. And here's who you appoint as the point person, somebody like Scott or a fire chief or somebody else. And here are the people that you trust to send out those messages. And you do want to put a little bit of thought into that. I mean, obviously you're going to trust people like your fire chief, your police chief, but you do want to make sure that anybody that you give the ability to send messages to everybody in town is the person that you want sending messages to everybody.
Yeah.
That's it for my short pitch, and I'm available for any questions or anything.
I have a question. So, Scott, at this point, it sounds like SMS texting within the municipality, say fire, if there's a training, they probably have a text group set up. So
It's not great. I got to be honest. We don't have great communication with all the different departments. We've been talking about this for a long time.
No, I meant if the chief said we're gonna have a training session.
Oh,
He's
just
got
for
a,
the- yeah.
he's got a group he's set up on his phone or somewhere, and he sends it to all of the fire department. But what it really clicked in for me was sending messages out to the town members, residents who opt in. You have to opt in, correct? You have to notify them that we had the system, and then a resident would have to sign up.
Yeah, right now, I'm kicking myself because I should have looked up your number, but there will be a large rate, a percentage of staff, your residents have already signed up. And then we encourage you to do a drive over to increase that number. But and in fact, I'll try and look it up here in a moment. But yeah, a lot of people will have signed up that are living in town, and then you'll get other people who may or may not live in town but have signed up to get a look about Manchester. One thing I didn't mention, which might be of interest to you, is also a good way to get information to second homeowners. They can live in Connecticut, New York, Florida, whatever, but they can sign up for BT Alert for Manchester. And then if there's a flood or ice storm or something like that, you can put out a message to people that are interested in the town, and that will go to those folks. And hopefully, the nice thing about that is, particularly for second homeowners, you can send out information about this happened, it only affected this area, and that can preempt a lot of phone calls about, hey, is my house okay, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the camera, so I'm looking at you on the screen to the left, so I apologize if you think I'm not paying attention. But we're all looking over there at you. So the end user does the end user pay a fee? Is that how you are able to?
No, pretty much everything Vermont Emergency Management does gets funded through the federal government, which is nice. So I mean, it is tax dollars, but it's not state tax dollars. And it's for what it is. This is a relatively cheap program for the state, and it's just not worth the administrative cost for us to try and back charge for anything. So it's free for the users. They just go to btalert.gov or many other ways to sign up for it, and then it's free for the towns to use. Again, it's only public safety stuff though, so not things like select board meetings at
Right.
6 o'clock to do something like that. But,
Yeah. I can't imagine why we wouldn't be
Does
jumping
anybody
on
not opt into this? Is there?
Yeah, is anybody?
There are a few towns that have talked about it and then said, we'll just use the 800 number, which is absolutely fine. But I would say there's not much reason not to do it. The only cost to you really is your staff time and getting a few people trained up. The training takes about an hour and a half-ish. So it's a few people getting trained up to be administrators and then maintaining the system. But it's a free capability. It's pretty powerful. You don't necessarily need to use it very often, but when you want to use it, it's really handy to have in your back pocket to say, oh, this bridge just collapsed or something. Oh, let's send this message out. And it's easier if you can do it yourself and then send updates yourself than going through the state.
Great. You overcame my objection.
Better than Facebook.
Yeah.
Better than
Not a bunch
Facebook.
of comments attached to it.
I have a question.
Steve has a question.
Steve.
I follow the Bennington one, Bennington Scanner and Blog or something.
Yeah,
And
Facebook.
it's a good thing, but there's so many comments that are so negative. Is that something that you have that's commented on Vermont Alert? Do people comment on things like that or what?
The only, actually, Sam and I will be the only ones that see any comments like that. It's not a social media thing that gets a thread. Sometimes VEM posts things to our Twitter and Facebook accounts, but you won't see that, and that gets moderated by the state public information officer. So again, you don't do that.
Great.
I do. Sometimes people do respond to things, and it comes to the state account, no matter who sends it. And every once in a while, I get a grumpy text or something like that. But it's actually much less than much less than it used to be. We've gotten better with sending our messages, so we're not spamming people with extra junk that they don't want. What we really encourage people now to sign up for quiet hours, so they're not the National Weather Service, if you didn't know, it sends messages out at 3 o'clock in the morning routinely, so that decision makers have that information at 3 or 4 in the morning to let people know before they get into work. But if you're not a decision maker, you really don't want that November message at 3 a.m. saying there's gonna be a frost. It's like, no, duh, we're in Vermont, yeah. So you can set up quiet hours so that you don't get those messages, but you will still get the poison gas message. And you can also subscribe to whatever you want. So, for some people I say, hey, look, why don't you just sign up and don't sign up for anything? And that way, if there is a poison gas truck or an earthquake or something like that, we will override the settings and send you that message. But otherwise, you won't hear anything else. You don't get the Department of Health has been sending out lately some of the air quality warnings, for example. Most people don't sign up for those, but if you have, I don't know, COPD or something like that, it's important you can sign up and get those kind of messages. So we've tightened it up a lot so that we don't get as many complaints. And it's really simple startup experiences, but it's pretty rare now that I get, an FYA, kind of response instead of, okay or thanks.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Yep.
So, how long have you been around?
The system, in the earliest incarnations were like 2013. It really came into being, I think, as a thing that worked around 2015. That's when I first got involved. I've been the backup like for 8 years now.
Yeah.
And occasionally interim lead. And we switched to the Everbridge system, I think 5 years ago, 2017, and something like that. And Everbridge is much nicer than the original version.
So when I was in Wilmington, it was right after Irene, and they were setting the system up, and we brought whoever Glenn's predecessor was into the select board, and he talked about this, and we ended up with hundreds of people signing up, really quickly on it, and it was tremendous to see.
It's real easy, I just did it. I did.
Yeah.
Profile successfully.
Do you need a motion on this one?
Yeah.
I would think so, and then we can follow up with
You guys can
Glenn.
I'll make a motion that we approve signing up for the VT Alert.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I believe that was unanimous.
Do we need to
Okay.
give Scott authority
Scott
to pick
is-
administrators?
Yeah, that's a detail. I don't know.
It probably comes with the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can or Scott can do it as a town manager.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Sam.
Awesome.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you, Sam.
Yeah.
Good luck in your
Good luck, Sam.
future endeavors. And thank you for all your hard work, Glenn. You did a great presentation.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, folks. We'll get you signed up, and I'll give Scott the numbers for the town.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks.
We're going to get this meeting done on time.
Yay.
We have town manager updates.
Just one to keep you updated on is the tax sale is scheduled for August 18th. We had a meeting with Merrill last week and her staff, with Mike and myself, and tax sale is overdue. And so there's going to be some names in the longer list than it should be, but going forward, we'll try to do one of these once a year.
Okay.
Where is it gonna be held?
It'll be held right here.
And will it be multiple or?
Oh, there's multiple,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And I'll be back to you before the meeting.
Multiple properties.
Multiple properties.
It's not.
What time would it be?
Tax sale, I don't know what it
You
is.
have-
Okay.
Hasn't existed in
Delinquent
my time.
taxes. We've been.
Delinquent and doing delinquent tax sales.
Yeah, we unsuccessful in getting these particular parcels caught up, and it's
I've seen the list, I know who
it's
Okay.
fairly routine.
It is fairly routine. It's just something you should do every year to cull the list so it doesn't grow. And I'll be back to you before the 18th at a select board meeting with a couple decisions you'll have to make, such as bidding on an unbidded property, whether we want to do that.
So I haven't gone through this process, can you explain it, like what happens at a tax sale?
So we warn the tax sale several times in advance. We have to go through a long process of notifying the property owner, asking them to pay and telling them about the additional penalties and interest that's added on, and then the advertising costs that are added on, then the attorney's costs that are added on. So we send them 3 official notices, then we post it in the paper 3 different times. Then we hold a public auction. The town attorney comes in, we have a list, and then there's potential bidders that come to
So
the
you say
auction.
there's a $20,000 debt. Somebody will say, I'll buy that for $5,000, hoping to collect
Do
it.
they have to
They would have to
satisfy the
get,
tax?
satisfy the town.
Yeah,
So
whatever
they
the
say,
tax-
let's say they.
Whatever the amount due is, that has to be satisfied. But the town can't make any more money on top of,
But so then what does that
But-
entitle them to?
That's right.
The
So,
property?
yeah, I'm
you're getting
I'm
there.
getting to that.
They own the property.
Well, not yet,
Well, okay.
right?
No,
So,
not yet.
so they have a year to redeem. So what happens is, someone bids on the property that hasn't paid the taxes, okay? So the taxes are then paid to the town from that person. But that person that owned the property, that still owns it, they have a year to redeem that payment. The beauty of it is, from the floor, the people that bidding on it, they get 8% interest. No, I'm sorry, 12% interest. All right, 1% a month. So there's a good investment opportunity for people, and yet the people that own it have a year to redeem. At the end of the year,
If they haven't paid that, then
if
they
they
lose
haven't
their
paid,
land?
they lose their property.
Okay.
well, Heidi, there's situations you wouldn't believe, one in which where somebody has walked away from the property and not paid the tax, has no interest in it whatsoever, and probably wouldn't be coming back to,
Just
you know, to redeem it. But it is the benefit of the person buying it and paying the taxes. One, the town gets their delinquent dollars, and 2, the person has the ability to get their property back. And it has happened, actually. It's interesting that, but most of the time, the person who buys it winds up with the property. But there is that benefit.
And I will add just one thing.
How long is the list?
Right now, we're in the, I think in the 30s to 40s. But I will add one thing. The closer we get to tax sale day, somehow people come
More
up with
people
money to
pay
pay the
up.
taxes. So that number will
Maybe.
dwindle considerably by the time we get to tax sale day.
And when was the last time we did one of these things?
I think it was 5 years ago.
It's been, not,
How long?
I don't think 5 years.
2017 or so.
We
But
hadn't done one when I was on the board.
Yeah, we did.
We did?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it was probably.
actually, we had
Well,
done, yes. we
Scott
had
checked.
done-
It was
It was
2017.
2017 or
Was it?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I was on the board.
Now, there's stipulations, right, that you have, like, is it 5-year increments, Scott? Is it
For-
if they have owed for 5 years and above, or how does that work?
No. It's anything, it's up to the delinquent tax collector, which is myself,
Right.
to determine when to go to tax sale. But I've worked with Mike on this, and he's very familiar with the process, as am I.
Right.
And we won't do anything until it gets to that second year. And we also have a minimum. If there's somebody that's just owes like $1,000 or something, we don't go to tax sale.
Yeah,
Gotta
there's
do
some, there's some big numbers out there too, if you look at
It's
the,
like a page and a half height.
I've seen it. It's in the town report. I've seen it, but I just never knew that this is how you dealt with it. It's like worse than the dog thing.
What?
But,
The numbers in the town report are a little misleading, because many of those were resolved by the time the town report comes
Yeah.
out. That's as of
That's right.
June 30th, the end of the fiscal year.
And we reach agreements with many of these people.
And a lot of people
To make payments.
are making payments. A lot of those that you see on the
town.
list have already entered into an agreement or making payments.
As long as they're living up to the agreement, they don't go to tax.
So these are people that are not only delinquent, but they're not responsive.
Correct.
Okay, I feel a little better about that.
Hey, you could own a new piece of property.
If we want a new piece of property.
So that was.
No, the town manager is the tax collector in Manchester, delinquent tax collector, and it's traditionally been that way, and we've had a number of these over the years, and it's a lot of them are weird little properties that nobody really wants. I mean, it's
Right.
a,
There's a lot of, yeah,
yeah,
it's unique type of situation.
yeah.
Like the one in the middle of the river that we got?
So that's all I have.
So, and you have the authority to set that date, is my understanding, the tax sale date.
Right, and I just work with Merrill on that to set the date. And her staff has to do a lot of work, they have to do deed, research and for every property. Mike has to prepare a ton of paperwork, especially since it's been so long. He's got to go back every single tax year and pull up all the tax bills and every single one that was missed, and he has to provide all that information to Merrill's office. So it's pretty complicated.
Is the board part of it, the process, or no?
Only in determining how we react at tax sale. Meaning, the town itself can bid on a property that's not being bidded on, other than leaving it on the grand list
Yeah.
and not collecting any taxes. So if
Right.
we own it, it would be like the Depot Street properties.
Right.
We own it and no one's
Yeah.
paying taxes on it. And we could sell it to somebody else that might be interested. And that happens occasionally too. Someone that's interested, but they don't want to bid that much, town takes it over, and then they approach the town and say, I'll offer half of what bid it. And the town doesn't want to be in the business of owning property, so they sell it for half, or whatever, negotiate.
In other business, I have one question. On the reassessment, when will we get, I did get a call from a constituent who got the letter.
Well, the letters
And
have
I
been hitting
got-
home, that's
I
for
got the
sure.
letter, I could be the constituent here. Will we have an idea, when do we think we'll have an idea of how that will affect people's taxes? Or is there no way of saying?
When the abstract is listed, you'll have a better idea. And then we have to set the tax rate. So once you
Right, we haven't set the tax rate.
You'll
I mean,
know that.
we've discussed it in open meeting that we anticipate that the municipal tax will actually go down a little bit.
Correct, yeah.
And then it's what will happen with the statewide education taxes.
Right, and that's the major factor, as you know.
Right, and we just have to wait.
I will say Gordon Black is getting bombarded
Sure.
with requests for appointments.
Oh, it's gonna be many more than 3 days.
I walked around today with a little sticker saying, "I am not Gordon Black."
Well, the
They see you
person
in the
who
hall,
called
"You
me-
Gordon Black?" No, it's that way.
Well, Gordon's hiding, because I tried to call him twice today. and he
Oh, no,
didn't
he's been
answer.
busy. He's not
Yeah.
hiding. He's facing the music, but
Yeah.
he's working really
Hold
hard.
on, Steve, the other question just being, is there anything the town can do to tell people what that process is, including
Yeah.
setting the tax rate, number one, for the municipality, two, what we're waiting for to find out from the state education tax? And just because
People are.
if we get something out that tells them this is the process, I guess the first thing, your taxes are not going to double like your assessed value.
Right.
Because that's what they're looking at. They're looking at that saying that's what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's quite a story here, and I'm sure that they'll be able to read about it in the paper of record. He's on it.
I actually reached out to Greg earlier this week, and we're putting together a manager or town hall update type of thing.
Okay.
So we're going to get that published, and it'll list things like this, and then
That's
maybe
great.
updates on the construction,
Oh, good.
stuff
That's
like
really
that.
good.
That's
very
amazing.
smart.
Thank you. That's
Yeah,
great.
Thanks.
I did talk to Gordon. He called me back.
Oh, really? I didn't get that.
Well, the thing that I don't want him to be confused with either is that online, Scott, there is an application that you can fill out for an appeal process. But that he didn't want, and I said to him, I sent it to you, remember? Did I?
That's for the
And I
Board of
sent it,
School.
So, and just
I
for
know.
the record,
But don't use that form. Call the office and book, right?
that's right. That form is for the next step,
Right,
the next level.
right.
So what he's setting up now is informal hearing.
Yeah.
The appraisal company that did the reappraisal will be at these informal hearings and will be able to address people's concerns about why the assessment went up so much. Okay, and then if they're still not satisfied, then they would go through this grievance process with BZA.
But thanks, Greg, that's good, because
Yeah, anything we can do to get people, help people understand what's happening. 'Cause there's gonna be a lot.
Are we in other business kind of right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, just because it sounds like you're doing some new things, which is wonderful, one of the things that we had authorized, and yet I don't think it's been done yet, was updating our website. And I think just in terms of being able to attach documents more readily, like the audit reports or post meetings, where are we with that? Because we authorized it, we hired a company.
So we didn't hire a company. I did hire a company Monday.
Oh, good.
Yesterday.
Oh, great.
Seems like a long time ago. So we signed a contract with this new company. It used to be called Office.gov.
Yeah.
They handle municipalities. They've been absorbed with a larger company, but they still handle a lot of municipalities. We're in the process of the changeover. It's going to take possibly 12 weeks.
Yep.
The difficulty we're going through right now is we don't have enough administrative staff
to
help with that upgrade. But we are doing it, and we are moving forward. So there will be a new, much better website. If you want to look at what they've done, Killington is a customer of theirs.
Okay.
Fairleigh is a customer, Lincoln in Vermont, and there's a couple others. And it's fairly simple set up. Once it gets up there, we're really looking forward to that.
Scott, we should put new website coming soon.
Yes.
On the page, because it's gone.
Yeah, the page is
The page is going a little
floating
floaty.
draft right now.
It shouldn't be too difficult to add that to the main paragraph.
We were just able to get into certain sections earlier
Got your
this
name
week.
in there.
Yeah.
Did you, do you have enough money? We authorized, I think, like 11,500 or something like that from ARPA.
We're under 5,000
Oh.
with this company.
Great.
They do have a built-in 6% increase.
Hope they're
each
not
year.
watching.
Right.
Ignore that number.
Yeah, we didn't, nobody
Just floated out
pay
there.
no attention to numbers behind the curtain.
No, these guys are really good to work with. They
Oh,
deal
great.
with municipalities all over the country.
Perfect.
And they know what to ask for.
I have no further questions.
Okay.
We have a couple of minutes. Any other business?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question on this tax sale date. Is that going to be a morning sale or
Yes.
an afternoon?
Morning.
Morning, AM.
I'm out of town.
Probably around 10. you'd
That's
start.
what I'm guessing, 10. I'll
Yeah.
double, I'll
That's
verify
okay.
right
Is
now.
that a weekend?
And
No.
there's another thing I'd like to ask you to resolve. I think certain areas around town are getting very garbagey. For example, TD Bank, my neighbor next door, that green space that they have that is part of the parking lot, I don't know, I've never seen it so ugly and messy. I talked to them about it, but see, their outside maintenance person or company doesn't do a very good job at all. I said, well, why hire them? But arrangements are made through the, I guess you'd call it the administrative section of the bank, and it's not done locally. I don't know if it's a Rutland company or who does their outside maintenance, but it isn't taken care of properly. You know, and it's too bad since Melanie left the back end of the property. I think, what is his name? Buck is his last name. Thad.
Okay.
Thad Buck. You know, he has kept things pretty neat back there in the back section. They put up that green fence
Yes.
to distinguish between the restaurant and business area in back of the bank and the bank. But along the side and back of Christo's is really getting terrible. And they have really big potholes. And I don't know how that's tolerated.
Well, it's a private
But
parking area.
can't we have somebody from the town, given the responsibility to say that we are concerned and we're hoping that things will improve?
Your comment in the old days would have landed in a spot where we'll get something accomplished by just mentioning it here, but I'm no longer the chairman of the board of that bank, so it's going to require some other approach. But I know all the management there locally. I can mention it. I'm more than happy to do that for you. But,
Well, I mean, really, it makes, people park back there and instead of taking their garbage with them, they just sort
Yeah.
of drop it.
Okay.
And it's
We have to
terrible.
extend
There's
or-
other areas like that as well.
We've passed 9 o'clock
I know, and you
and
gotta say
without
good
taking an
night,
action, the
ladies.
meeting ends. If there's no other business to
The
conduct
next
here.
meeting is when? Next week?
2 weeks.
2 weeks,
2 weeks from today?
yeah. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
The
Move to
20th.
adjourn.
The 20th, yeah.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. We can certainly tell you about, and we should probably stop